What's up, everyone? Welcome to another edition of Processing Blue, where, yes, we process blue for you. I'm Alex Zietlow. He's Mike Kaye, and we cover the Carolina Panthers for the Charlotte Observer. And, Mike, you were all over the state last week covering pro days. Now you are in a place with a lot of palm trees in your background and some umbrellas in your back room at the owners' meetings in Arizona. I feel like I haven't seen you in decades. How are you?
It certainly feels like it's been a while, doesn't it? Like
Yes.
it's I've gotten in a lot of mileage, both figuratively and literally. No, it's been cool out here. I mean, as you'll see later in our interview with punter Sam Martin, it even rained. So like, and if you've ever lived in Arizona, you know that happens like once every 6 weeks. But
Mike, you're one of 10 people who have lived in Arizona who now live in North Carolina.
I don't think that's true, but whatever. Anyway, it's been a pretty productive week. Had some conversations with Dave Canales, had some conversations with other members of the organization. Got some good stories coming up for you on charlotteobserver.com. But for right now, I think we really have a lot to unpack from Dave Canales' first comments since free agency.
Yeah, we absolutely do. And like you said, that's going to be the main portion of this podcast, but we're also going to have an interview with Sam Martin that I'm sure y'all will enjoy because he is just a delight. And he has a lot to say as a punter, also as an onside kick specialist guy. So stick around for that. But Mike, let's start with your takeaways from talking with head coach Dave Canales this week, and maybe if we can start with the Jonathon Brooks of it all. So, when you or the reporters asked Dave about Jonathon Brooks's timeline for return, what stood out to you about what Dave Canales said?
Well, first, there seems to be a lot of optimism that he'll be able to fully participate in the offseason program to start. Obviously, phase one and phase two aren't a lot of contact. They're not even on the field for phase one, but be able to feel like he's part of the team, be included on workouts, be included in film session, be included in conversations. And I think that's really important, not only for his mental health, but his chemistry with his teammates. And I think from there, the signs are pointing up because physically he looked good in December. So I think they are pretty optimistic about him. But again, you're not going to know. We've talked about this 100 times on the nationally recognized Processing Blue podcast that Jonathon Brooks is kind of house money right now, and they would love for him to emerge and be healthy and retain his speed and do everything that they envisioned when they drafted him with a second round pick in 2024. It's just a matter of whether he's able to recover, whether he's able to retain his health and move from there.
So, is it too early to be discussing what his role will be in 2026?
I think it is, but if I had to project it, it'd be a 1B,
Okay.
like the Rico Dowdle role. I think if he is healthy and is going through his normal progression, like, and maintaining his health, I think they feel like rip the Band-Aid off. Let's get the value out of him. It's been 2 years. And there's a lot of optimism internally. I've spoken to several members of the organization, and from top down, there's a lot of optimism, but optimism is just optimism right now. And so you have to kind of see where it goes from there. I do think Dave Canales was fairly honest in his assessment. He knows what he did in college, but you never know what he's going to be like now. The second he takes contact, what's going to happen. So um, I think it's still a big wait and see.
Another thing that you and Dave talked about, at least in your reporting, was uh, what to do at the center position. And
Mm.
there was a key word that Dave used when talking about Luke Fortner. He said that Luke will have the chance, the opportunity to compete. He will be competing for the starting role. And I think a lot of people, when they saw that move in free agency, whether that be fans, reporters, whoever, thought, okay, well, the Panthers found their answer for Cade Mays' departure. And that didn't seem to be what Dave Canales thought, at least how he presented it to y'all. Is that a fair assessment? Does it sound like the Panthers are going to go into the draft looking for someone who can compete for that starting center role?
I'm at the point where I'd be shocked if they don't draft a center at some point on draft weekend. That said, I actually think there's a likelier possibility of them drafting a center than an offensive tackle, honestly, based on my conversations. I don't know that they don't double dip on offensive line in this draft. I think they'd like to, but I think center they see as a long-term need and also an opportunity for them to get cheaper at a starting position. They have a lot of faith in Damian Lewis and Robert Hunt elevating the talent in between them. And I think with Fortner, he's an experienced guy. He's been a backup, he's been a starter. They don't feel compelled or urged to start him, but he's probably going to have a leg up in a competition. Nick Sandberg's been brought up a lot this offseason, both behind the scenes and with Canales, bringing him up here in Arizona. And, we've had Nick Samak on the show. He's got a good story. He's kind of one of those new school centers, the Ryan Khalil, Jason Kelsey, kind of undersized, can get out in space, really good in zone blocking. But I do think somebody like Kansas State's Sam Heck is a guy to watch on day 2. I don't think there's a first round center in this draft that fits what the Panthers need or want, but I think they want to long term commit to a center after the amount of juggling they've had to do over the last 2 years.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up Sam Hex. I wrote down a couple of possibilities that the Panthers could take at center. The guys that I'm really looking at, the Keelan Rutledges out of Georgia Tech, the Jake Slaughters out of Florida.
Ding ding, ding ding.
Oh, yeah, very true, very true.
Jake Slaughter he checks a lot of boxes that they look for.
Yeah.
He also looks like he could teach you algebra.
Dude ran a 5.1 second 40-yard dash, which is really impressive. And that's something that Canales likes in his centers, really likes athletic centers, can get into the second level of an offense. So there are options, but like you said, probably a day 2, day 3 sort of thing. One final thing before we move on to the rest of our show, a final takeaway. One bit that you put was really interesting was that the defense can probably look a little bit different under EJ Evero in this year 3. Can you kind of expound on what you mean by that?
So I asked Dave a couple of questions. 4I, the defensive end position in a 3-4, and then 3 technique, the pass rushing defensive tackle in a 4-3. I asked him about the value in that because, as I've said on this podcast, a lot of people last week got up in arms about what I said about Turk Warden playing too much because he was injured and only played 9 games. He played too much in the games that he was available. He's probably like a 25 snap a game player. Bobby Brown's probably similar, 25 to 30. They need a guy who, like A'Shawn Robinson, can be versatile, play all 3 spots, move around. That is a big hole, and Dave Canales even admitted that that was a big hole. And when I asked about what they were looking for, he talked about the importance of that 4I position, the importance of that 3-tech position. Turk can play 3-tech. That's his best spot. I think 4I and nose tackle are Bobby's best spots. Derek can do everything, but so could A'Shawn. And I think they need a guy who's like long-limbed, can move around, doesn't necessarily have to be a starter. And I've said this before, I think they have some interior defensive line stuff. But to your point, they want to build around the talent that they have because they know their scheme up and down. It's just a matter of, like, for instance, like last year, Brad Isaac brought up asking the running backs what they like, asking the quarterbacks what they like. It's more so putting guys in positions to succeed. Todd Wash has a very strong background in hybrid defensive fronts. They ran a 4-3 under when I covered him in Jacksonville. That's definitely a hybrid where you've got guys playing multiple types of looks and scheme fits and stuff like that. I think with Turk, if you can limit his snaps, he can be much more effective getting upfield. And so I think that's the type of verbiage they've been using when talking about the defensive front. You also have a linebacker now in Devin Lloyd, who people are raving about. I talked to Liam Cohen this morning, D'Amico Ryans, and Shane Steichen, and they all talked about his impact on the field. You can read about it on charlotteobserver.com, by the way. But he's a guy who's very good at blitzing, and Trevin Wallace is also very good at blitzing. And when you can do that and marry that with a 3 technique who can get upfield, which is what Turk can do, and Bobby and Derek Brown have become better pass rushers as they've gone along in their career, it helps. But if you can add another fastball, um, I think that helps you tremendously. And I think they can get that type of player in the third or fourth round.
Good stuff. This is far from the last time we will be discussing things like this. But for now, as promised, let's kick it to our conversation with veteran punter Sam Martin.
It's not every day we have a weapon on the podcast, but look who we found. It's Sam Martin, everybody's favorite punter. How you doing, Sam?
Good. How you guys doing? Thanks for having me. Quite the intro there.
I mean, I try to keep it as limited as possible, but like as lay it on thick as much as I possibly could. Like you tend to do with the ball when you kick it. So, first off, welcome back, 2-year deal. How important was it to get more than a 1-year commitment for you?
You know, it wasn't the most important thing, but kind of the way I looked at it is it's no secret, my age, going into my 14th season. And I don't really want to play anywhere else, to be honest with you. So I wanted to go into this, hopefully it's not my last deal, but if it is, I know it'll be with the Panthers. So that was kind of my mindset is I'd like to get at least a couple years in here and whatever happens after that, maybe me and JJ just keep signing 1-year minimums for the rest of our career.
Mm.
That's it was kind of that was kind of the mindset is at this point in my career I enjoyed my time there so much last year, the team, the culture, the coaches, the city. In my mind it was like play 2 more years there, give it a 15, and then I'll stick around as long as they want me to type thing. So I was glad that we were able to come to that. I just free agency for a 36-year-old punter is not that fun, so doing that again next year and then in the next year. And so it just kind of it worked out the way I was hoping it was gonna.
Sam, now that you've had a few months since the end of the season, where would you rank this past 2025 in your career, just based on your production and all these things?
I'd say it's up there. I mean, probably a top three season for me, as far as I guess consistency and kind of versatility. Being able to do a couple different things there, and just the opportunity as well to flip the field of situations and then pin them in situations. So the situations matter when it comes to productivity as a punter, obviously. So kind of everything kind of just went right, and I think that has a lot to do with when any punter has a good year. Whether it's weather or situationally where you're out of the field, stuff like that. Being able, having a large opportunity to capitalize on those situations helped a lot. But I was real happy with the way the season I had, and a lot of credit goes to JJ and the coverage guys and Tracy. It takes a village to kind of to have a type of season as any type of specialist. So it just kind of everything kind of meshed together, I think, and that's the result you get when you got a great group working together.
Yeah, you mentioned it takes a village, and I think one of the frustrations for the special teams unit, one of the few frustrations was the New England game. Like, there were a couple of big returns. If those big returns don't happen, your numbers look exponentially better from a net standpoint. How did you kind of how do you as a punter when that's you're like the starting pitcher, if a guy doesn't get ruled for an error for a dropped ball, like it's on their record. How do you compartmentalize that, and how do you look at stuff like that as it starts to rain in Arizona for like only the sixth time probably this year?
um, it's obviously those type of games are frustrating no matter what the circumstances. And but it's the way the game goes. You're gonna have plays and situations where I hit a bad punt and those guys bail me out, and then vice versa. So it's just the way it goes. It's just unfortunately, that game was just seemed a lot more extreme because it was all in one game. But that's the NFL for you, and that's special teams for you in general. So it's just you keep on moving, and I think that although that game, statistically, and we didn't do our part on that side of the ball. I think that game was a large factor in the direction we went the rest of the year, across the board. I thought we rebounded really well from that. That's all you can do. You just keep going forward, and it takes all 11 of us. It's not one guy. It's not three guys. It takes all of us. So I think the way that game kind of lit a spark in us, and the guys played, unbelievable down the stretch. And yeah, it's never one game. It's never one person. It's always, rolling it together, especially on the punt team specifically.
Mm. Sam, you mentioned earlier in one of your answers your versatility, and you were probably talking about your punting production and all these things. But I wanted to ask about your onside kick acumen. Last year, 46 onside kicks were attempted in the NFL. Only 6 were successful. That's a 13% conversion rate. You were one of those 6 successful conversions. That was one of 2 you've had in your career, right?
Someone told me that the other day, and maybe honestly, I can't really remember. It sounds right. I had one more, but I mean, I've probably had 10 attempts, 10 plus attempts, so I'm probably right there in that same 13% recovery rate personally.
Okay.
But yeah, I
Is
think I did. I want to say I had one in Detroit back in the day.
Yeah, that's the one that I found when I was doing a quick research on it. What is the art to kicking an onside kick? And is there like a special spin that you have on it?
There's multiple different ways to do it. Guys have their own personal way. There's tricks. There's stuff that hasn't even been done yet. I just have this one type of ball. Really, really, in my opinion, especially with the new rules and how they line up, and it's kind of a bang bang type of play. The goal is really trying to make them make a mistake. Hit a ball that's bouncing funny, that skips funny, that it's hard to judge, and make the return team make a mistake and us capitalize. You don't really see the days like they used to where you hit the high hop, it's a jump ball, or it's just landing a guy's lap. It's like typically something's got to happen at that 11-yard, 12-yard mark, a ricochet or something. So my intent is always to try to hit something, the funky ball that kind of bounces weird, hits off someone's shoulder. They judge it wrong. They let it go. It hits off their foot, like what's happened to us this past year. You just want the ball to be unpredictable in essence.
And I have one more follow-up about the onside kick. I'm sure you weren't expecting to talk this much
Yeah, it's
about
okay.
this particular play, but at the owners' meetings this year, there was a lot of discussion about should there be should the NFL kind of tweak the onside kick rules? And I'm curious, as someone who like literally works in this area of the game, do you think that this rule needs to be changed at all? Do you think it's good as it is? Do you have any thoughts in this realm?
I guess that depends on what the league wants. Do they want more recovery? Is the like I think if the goal is more recoveries, then yeah. I mean, even if it was something as little as um moving, the cover guys back a couple yards so they had some momentum, or even moving them up, or moving me back, or something that gave it a little more fair shot to where you weren't necessarily relying on them to botch a recovery. It was more of an actually 50-50 type play, because as you just said, the numbers are extremely low. And but I'm not really sure what the NFL thinks in that realm. If they want it to be, a 10 to 12% recover rate, or if they want it to come down to, more of a coin flip. So um, I think there are definitely ways to help move the needle a little bit towards the kick team, but I'm not, I don't know if that's what they want or not. So I guess we'll find out.
Sam, in recent weeks, we've had Thomas Incoom and Claude Cherilus come on the program, and we've seen the Panthers really kind of make it a move to re-sign a lot of guys who were cogs on the special teams unit. Having the familiarity in a coverage unit, how beneficial is that to you, but also Tracy and JJ, and even really on kickoffs for Ryan?
Yeah, I think that's huge. And I was keeping an eye on all that, obviously, and it was really great seeing all those guys come back. Um, there's a roster full of really good special teams guys on this team. And you just named 2 of them. And then with Isaiah coming back too, and you can go down the list. Um, it's a really good special teams roster, in my opinion. And with the continuity, especially with the cool stuff Tracy does, he's always coming up with new stuff every game, especially for the punt team. You got to have guys that they're able to buy into that stuff, and kind of believe in it. And the group of guys that we had last year, and the guys that are got coming back this year are like foundational parts to that on kickoff as well. So it's great to have those guys back. You know, just the locker room, the friendships, and sense of continuity is huge as well. You know, when times are tough, when times are going well, it's good to have all the guys kind of be familiar with each other and get through it.
Sam, I wanted to ask about life before the NFL, just real quick. You came from quite the athletic family. Your dad was a three-sport athlete at Central Michigan. Both of your sisters played soccer at Furman. What was it like growing up in the Martin house? Were these athletic expectations just sky high? Was it super competitive? Can you just take me into what it was like growing up there?
It was pretty much it was a full-blown soccer house for all intents and purposes. You know, I played basketball, I played baseball when I was younger, but basketball and soccer were kind of my main sports, but it was really soccer, me and my sisters, nonstop travel soccer teams, since I was a little kid, and same thing with them, growing up with them. So it was really kind of just 100% soccer, and that was pretty much all we were doing, if we weren't at school. Um, age gaps were big enough to where as far as me and my sisters, it wasn't crazy competitive, but it was with those 2 a little bit. But yeah, it was just nonstop soccer tournaments, all over the country, that type of thing. And then when football came into play, my senior year, it kind of changed everything. But yeah, it was your typical, South Georgia soccer family. It was always all about soccer.
I mean, to follow up on that, your senior year of high school leads you to go to App State eventually. I went to Boone for the first time ever. I sent you the picture. Like I've never experienced like a locale quite like that. Like I think the closest is like Sedona, and it's like the southeast Sedona. What was it like playing in that atmosphere, playing for that school, and then having those ties to Carolina that you do?
It was cool. It was kind of funny when I went up there on my visit in college, and I was kind of on the fence, like, do I bail on soccer and do the football thing? I went up there and it was like your typical Boone ice storm, like brutal. Couldn't drive anywhere. Ice, like it was insane. Like I've never seen anything like it. Um, so they're all kind of worried that that was going to scare me off. I kind of was like, this is kind of cool. It's like I've never, same as you. I'd never kind of been in that type of climate. The campus is like, the typical mountain town, college campus right there in that valley. Um, so it was just so different and so unique enough to me that it was like this kind of talked to me a little bit. And the mindset was kind of I went there and didn't like football. It didn't work out. They had a pretty competitive soccer team that I was just kind of fall over to. But I ended up loving it. I loved everything about App State. I tell people it was the best decision I ever made, and to this day, I still love going up there. And now being back in Carolina, obviously, complete full circle. Most of my teams I've been on, it's kind of been hard for me to get back to Boone. It's not an easy place to get to. So now being there, I got to make a couple trips up there last year. I plan on going up here in a month or two. Once OTA start, getting more involved with the program up there, seeing where I can help out in ways. So it's exciting, it's fun, and I'm looking forward to getting up there more and more. And it's crazy to see that when I went back there last, I barely recognized stuff. It's been 13 years and it's so much different. Stadium, the town, everything. So it's going places. It's really cool.
Do you have a favorite? Okay, I'm going up. Personal note. I'm going up there with the kids for a vacation later this month. Do you have a favorite spot or like a favorite trail or something you
Um,
like to do out there?
I mean, when I was there, we did a lot of tubing down the river. It was a lot of fun. It would probably look a little different than you do it with your kids, but it's a good time. It's fun. The water's great, especially if you're when it's warmer when you're up there. I encourage that. That'd be fun. There's a few different outfits that you could find. Um, as far as that, I probably couldn't help you much as far as kid friendly activities.
Yeah, I mean, I guess asking a guy who's spent a college career in there is a little bit of a different experience, but I'll toss it to Alex for the next one.
Well, I wanted to ask about Boone as well. Did you know of App State? Like, how much did you know of App State prior to the win over Michigan? Because you came the year after.
Yeah.
That was in North Carolina. That's considered one of the greatest like feats, underdog stories in sports history. In many ways. Did you know about App State prior to that? Did that really even hit your radar during the recruiting whole thing? Like how did that win impact Sam Martin?
I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure how aware I was of them before that, because like I said, I watched football like a normal person, but I was always a soccer player, so I didn't really have a college football team I rooted for. I wasn't watching it every Saturday type thing. If anything, it was just UGA because that's what everyone did where I live, DJ in Auburn. So no, I wasn't completely familiar with them. And then obviously when that win happened, they kind of came on the map. And then when they came in last second and started recruiting me, it was like, oh yeah, I know these people are, and a 3-time national championship, you know. And then when you don't really know about them, and you hear about them, and then you go to the campus, it doesn't feel like this small school that you kind of have in you have depicted once you get up there. It's like, okay, this is a legit campus, legit, type of university. So yeah, to answer your question, no, was not very familiar with them until that Michigan win, and then they started recruiting me.
Very fair.
Sam, you and I are the same age basically. Like I'm a couple of years older than you, but we're from like a generation that kind of grew up with the Panthers, is in a way that like when we were in our adolescence, that's when the franchise was first starting, and it was part of that what you would call a Madden um sort of generation. The amount of growth that the Panthers have had. You guys obviously had a successful season last year, but like you've been in the league for a while, you've seen the organization kind of grow. What's your perspective on the franchise? You said you don't want to play anywhere else, but like how much do you think the franchise has grown since, growing up that it was one of the cool helmets on Madden and all that type of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I it's obvious just from what I've been there, but then also you think about, the already, it's relatively I guess, a young franchise, if you will, in the NFL still. And you just think about what they've already accomplished and some of the legends that have come through here already. Some of the biggest and best names at their positions have come out of Carolina already. Been to Super Bowls, it's just it's a franchise that I think has already accomplished so much in its young time. And even earlier when it did accomplish it, it was even younger. So I think it's only getting better. It's only getting growing. I think it's great, amazing what Tepper's doing, the direction Tepper's taking it, with the renovations and just the way he's handling the running the organization. You can't help but be excited for the direction it's going. And yeah, I think it's going places, and obviously, and it's only getting bigger and better. And it's a really really fun time to be a Panther and a Panthers fan.
Well, Sam, I really appreciate you joining us. Really insightful stuff. We'll see you down the road when you're, obviously used as a weapon on Sundays.
Can always count on you, Mike.
Yeah.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks for having me, man.
All right. Well, Mike, that was just great. His insight from what it means to be in North Carolina for a long time, all the way through his journey to being in Carolina at the Panthers organization in this moment was I thought really spectacular.
Yeah, Sam's a really insightful guy, and I kind of regret not getting to talk to him a little bit more during the season. Like, he's a guy that I've had a lot of conversations with since like the last month of the season. He's a very insightful guy, and he really wanted to be here. Like, he really, really wanted to be here. And, we see guys like Austin Corbett leaving. We see guys like Andy Dalton leaving, guys that wanted to be in Charlotte. And I think rewarding the behavior, or not behavior, but the outlooks of people that want to be here for the most part has been really impactful towards the program that they're trying to build here. And I know that's very important to both Dan Morgan and Dave Canales.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, it wouldn't be a Processing Blue episode at this point in the year if we don't talk about the NFL draft and we don't talk about the Panthers perhaps going out and getting some players who want to stay in Carolina for the long term. Last week, we talked about the quote unquote high key needs that the Panthers needs, the immediate people, the positions that this team needs to fill for the 2026 season. This week, I want to talk about the low-key needs that the Panthers need. The needs that, okay, if you look on paper, you're like, oh no, the Panthers are good there. But in reality, from a long-term perspective, the Panthers do need to invest in this position group.
Yeah,
Yo,
yeah, no, I would say cornerback for me is the low key need. You've got Mike Jackson, who's going to be 30 in January and is only signed through this season. Obviously, the Panthers, if they wanted to, could extend him. They wouldn't save a lot of money on the cap by doing so, but I think he's a guy that if they want to invest in him long term, it makes sense. The problem is that most corners lose their speed after 30. That said, his game's all about technique and size, and he is a zone corner. The issue you might have is if Avero gets a head coaching job or things don't work out this season and he leaves, then you might have a scheme change that might not benefit him. JC Horn is very much scheme versatile, and so that helps. They feel really good about Corey Thornton. He might be a guy to watch at nickel. Shaw Smith-Wade is probably a guy who's going to play safety and nickel. But I think they need some outside depth, and it would not stun me if they spent a day 2 or day 3 pick on an outside corner who could eventually either replace Mike Jackson or serve as the first man up long term for this cornerback group.
cool, cool. Um, I tend to agree, and I'm kind of in the same realm when we're talking about low-key need in the NFL draft. I'm just on the offensive side. I think that the Panthers low-key need a wide receiver.
And you're
Um,
right.
um, they're just wide receivers in the NFL are just so important to an offense's explosiveness, their reliability in the pass game. They're also really expensive to acquire in free agency and via trade. So drafting them is the way to go, particularly in a franchise like Carolina, I think. In fact, if you look at like mock drafts across the league, you'll tend to see that the Panthers, or that a lot of people have the Panthers taking a receiver in round one, which would mean taking a wide receiver in round one for each of the past 3 years. So I think that this is something that the Panthers are considering. When you look at their room right now, you got Tetero McMillan, Jalen Coker, Xavier Legette, John Mechie, and then you got some either veteran guys who have been around Dave Canales for a really long time, like a David Moore, or some guys who still have a lot to prove in the NFL, the Jimmy Horns, the Bryson Tremaines, and then special teams aide Dan Chisena. So those like this is a room that the Panthers need to invest in, I think, and it honestly wouldn't surprise me if they spend a first round pick on a wide receiver, whether that be Casey Concepcion, who has great separation, is super, super fast, a Jordan Tyson out of Arizona State, who started 9 games and still led the team in receiving, a fast, smooth route runner, whose brother, Jalen, plays for the Cavaliers. Mike, I know you're an NBA guy now. But then also there's Makai Lemon, a USC guy who won the Blitnikoff Award. I actually talked to ESPN's Matt Miller, who is a draft sort of like how you say a draft expert, and he really likes his fit with a lot of teams, but particularly with Bryce Young and these Panthers. So this is a massive year for Bryce Young, and low key, it's a massive year for this wide receiver room. Anything you want to add on that, Mike?
Well, as it's starting to rain again here in Arizona, and I'm luckily under an umbrella that hopefully takes care of wetness. Yeah, it wouldn't shock me if they went for a three-peat at wide receiver, especially if the player was unique to the wide receiver room, which to me, you brought up KC Concepcion. I would keep a pretty close eye on him. He's a guy who they can use in the slot and at the Z position. He's a guy who can push Coker to the Z position. And I think they are the type of team with a former wide receivers coach as a head coach, a former wide receivers coach as an offensive coordinator, a former wide receiver who is now a wide receivers coach. Like I think Dan Morgan feels good about betting on the developmental skills of those three guys in Dave Canales, Brad Isaac, and Rob Moore. And I think it all worked out with T-Mac. I mean, last year around this time, I doubted they were going to draft T-Mac, and he ended up being the best player available. I mean, that's literally why they drafted him. I know that there is some sentiment that he was the guy all along, but realistically, when you're picking at 8, you never know who's going to be off the board. And I think they took the guy who they graded out as the best, and that was the right call. And in my conversations, I do think they are very much open to drafting a wide receiver early, and they want to enforce competition at all part. We brought up center. Dave Canales' big takeaway from this is he wants as much competition as possible. He's not going to rule anything out. He wants to let the cards fall as they may. And I think for the Panthers, this is an opportunity for them to get better by iron sharpens iron, which I hate that term, but that's kind of where they're at.
Good stuff. Mike, anything else before we get out of here?
We will have a newsletter from you on Monday. You can check out the Devin Lloyd story that I brought up earlier. We also have some insightful stuff on Kenny Pickett from Dave Canales and Kellen Moore. And we'll have coverage throughout the owners' meetings week. Plus, I've got a mock draft dropping on Monday, so check that one out.
Heck yeah. All right. And with that, here we go. Thanks, as always, for listening to our pontifications on all things Panthers with Mike Kaye and myself and our wonderful producer, Zach Dennis. Please subscribe and follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts by searching Processing Blue. And if you watch us on YouTube, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and click on the bell icon to get notified whenever new episodes drop. And finally, please be sure to stick to charlotteobserver.com for all of your Panthers needs. Mike, stay humble, stay creative, and keep processing.
That's a wrap.